If you know what pet peeves are, they are things that just really bother you. They are things that are troubling things. So here's a couple of mine. One of the big pet peeves that I have is I don't like when things don't tear on the perforation. You know those little holes in like your check or a piece of paper? When you try to tear it and it doesn't tear on that kind of frustrates me. It's a troubling thing for me. And everybody's pet peeve is when somebody follows too close. One of them for me, I can't stand if my socks get wet. If I'm on a work day and my socks get wet, the work day is over. Here's my fourth and final one, just so you know. I can't take it when my hands get sticky. If I get honey or syrup on my fingers, I've got to go right to the sink and wash them off, because that just is a troubling thing for me. You are joining us as we're going through the book of Jonah. And here's what we're going to start out with. I want to talk to just about a couple things in the book of Jonah that are the troubling things, kind of as a review of the book of Jonah. And here's some troubling things in the book of Jonah. We went through the book of Jonah in our small group. I have a small group. We went through it. And one of the most troubling things, of course, is that the man gets eaten by a fish. You know, but we went through the book of Jonah and we reviewed after we were done in the book of Jonah. We said, what are the things that really struck you about the book? And nobody mentioned the fish. And here's what that taught us. There's a whole bunch of other things that are really interesting in the book of Jonah. There's troubling things. The fish is a troubling thing. Here's another thing. The people that Jonah has to minister to, the Assyrians, are a brutal people. If you did some research on the Assyrians, you would find out if they siege a city, if they take over a city, most of the people in the city would rather kill themselves than be captured by the Assyrians, because the Assyrians are so brutal. There's another troubling thing in the book of Jonah, and that happens in chapter 3, verse 10. If you're familiar with the book, it is that God changes his mind. It's a troubling thing. You'll hear a lot of commentators. I'm not going to really talk about that today, but it's a troubling thing. Maybe someone else later on as we're going through the book of Jonah will touch that. If not, call me. I might help you with that problem. Another troubling thing about the book of Jonah is these are empires. Assyria is an empire. The nation of Israel had never seen an empire like Assyria before. Yes, there was nations like Egypt, but they were more regional nations. Assyria is the first in a line of empires that are pretty much going to take over the world. There's Assyria, there's Babylon, there's Media Persia, there's Greece, and there's Rome. 5 empires that you're going to see as you go through some of the prophets. And these are troubling things because these empires are huge, and the nation of Israel did not know how to handle these empires. Here's the 5th and final thing that's really disturbing about the book of Jonah, and that is that we have a disobedient prophet. Usually when you see a prophet, it's someone who is foretelling the future. It's someone who's bringing a message. But in the book of Jonah, this prophet is not about a message of a prophet. The book of Jonah is about the experience of a prophet, and the prophet Jonah is a disturbing and sometimes disobedient prophet. So here's the application that I hope you find. Are we responding to God, or are we being like Jonah and disobedient to God? How can you be more responsive to God, and how can I be more responsive to God? If you're like Jonah and you're disobedient, you're the kind of person not responsive, and you say, hey, I'll just do this later. It's not my thing right now. That's what Jonah does. If you're like Jonah, you go, I'm not going to be responsive to God because I don't want anyone telling me what to do. Nobody tells me what to do. If you're a disobedient person, you're not responsive, then you might say, hey, it's not that big a deal. It's just the Assyrians. We don't really care about them. And you just say no. And instead of going to Nineveh, you go to Tarshish, like Jonah. Maybe you think you're pretty good, like Jonah, and you think, I'm not going to go minister to a bunch of people like the Assyrians. Whatever it is, the book of Jonah asks you, are you going to be disobedient, or are you going to be responsive to God? I hope you can learn to be responsive to God as you go through the book of Jonah. enjoy it as we go through this summer. See ya.